Yeah.
So a crucial element is the severity of the consequence or the amount of change
Well, I'm thinking too
that
that the
takes
best
place.
thing is that it has it moved. Yeah, because has it moved you to a different status relative to the situation or not? If I take
Okay.
4 hit points, I've got 42 hit points, and we're in the first round of combat in D&D 3.5, and I take 4 hit points of damage. My status in the combat has not changed,
Right.
and so that's what I'm getting at here. If so,
Okay.
basically, there's no I'm not going to be in a random walk at that point. I will, however, if the hits change my options, change my ability to continue. So the classic death spiral is when
Hmm.
the negative side of that is overly consequential. So you dive fast. That's what a death spiral is. The person can always say, "Oh, but you always had a chance to succeed," and it's like, dude, after my second failure, my chance to succeed isn't going to save me,
Yeah.
right? That's
Right.
so the death spiral is a severe form of half of the random walk. So
Gotcha.
so that's what we're really looking at. You want dire consequences, and I think a lot of our discussion at Adepts Play over the last couple of years has focused on to some extent has kind of has turned our attention away from minimal consequences that are accrued over a long time, and has sort of shifted more toward what's the hard hitting, if not fatal, but at least we knew we missed this roll at this time in play, and it made a difference that it was this roll and not the next roll, right?
And I found that um like to contrast the D&D experience, the example you were just mentioning, with my experiences of playing Troll Babe. So like I only played it a couple of times, but in each case there were times when everyone was at the edge of their seat, right? Like waiting to see what
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
die would come up. And that is a level of interest or excitement that you don't have if it's just this kind of minimal change,
Right.
right?
Right.
And yeah, and
You
so I
want
definitely want more of that
Yeah,
kind
I'm
of
kind of
feature.
feeling it with the Gamma world right now, which is far more charming and fun than I think we anticipated. I mean, we all went in with a positive attitude, but we've been more charmed by the whole thing, than I care more about the characters than I thought I might. And one of the things I noted was that you kind of expect to be more excited by a tougher combat, right? And with a more severe foe. Okay,
Okay.
here it comes. This is a big deal, and I realized that the middle third of the combat's kind of a wash. The middle third of the fight
Okay.
is kind of a
Because not
the
much changed,
yeah.
or there
There's
wasn't much consequence. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you're kind of like, well, we could have
Okay.
skipped that whole part if we had the beginning of the fight, we had the end of the fight. To be
Hmm.
a little blunt, it's exactly the way I feel about pro basketball.
Okay.
Why don't we watch the first 5 minutes of the game and the last 5 minutes of the game? I really
I
see no
see.
point in
Interesting.
watching anything in between. Um,
Interesting point.
so
I get
yeah,
it. Okay.
yeah. I mean that way, the
Hmm.
game would be lost or won at 20-21 instead of 101-99,
Right.
and So anyway, I don't know just where you want to go with that, but the thing that makes Trollbabe work is that there is a trade-off, and a back and forth between roll decision. In Trollbabe, it has to do with pressing your luck with the rerolls
Yeah.
and a little bit of resource management. Rarely in Trollbabe does resource management start to pinch, right, when you run out of reroll items. But
Yeah.
when it sometimes does, but not that often. More importantly, it's the risk that you're putting her at, with the repeated rolls, and also the risk to the relationships. You're kind of like, do I really want to, risk this guy's life? I mean, all he did was like my character. Why should I kill him for that? Um,
Right.
And so I think that you can see that in a number of my other designs. But to turn away from mine and to look at a couple of the other games I've been playing lately, just to look at that D2, what they call the 2D20 Modifius system, as I've experienced it with a Star Trek game, you basically need to get lots of successes. You need lots of successes, not just because of the difficulty of what you're facing, which in some cases you really need more. They call it 2D20, but you're often rolling more than two. And that's good because if you're up against a high resistance, you really need more successes. And the only way you get more than one success off a die is either by rolling a one, or if it qualifies, a little higher than a one sometimes for a reason. So it's rare. I mean, you've got the target number. It's usually, it varies around 10 depending on what you're doing. So basically, you need a handful of those dice a lot of the time. You roll, and you can, do lots of things to get more dice. But you also, with a 20, get what's called a complication, which is a bad thing, basically. And not just a bad thing in the moment. You're like, oh, okay, I'll take a complication. Oh, owie, owie, I hurt my wrist. Okay, next roll, right? No, this is a complication that's like fuel for the game master to do awful things. So, so the point is, what I'm trying to say is, more dice is required for success, but more dice is also the chance for complications. Worst case
Increases the
scenario,
risk.
yeah, worst case scenario, you get a huge raft of 20s. But more importantly, with 5 or 6 dice rolling, yeah, your chance of succeeding are now getting pretty high. But your chance of getting just 120 out of that is also goes up quicker than most people think. The chance of getting any single value on any die goes way up really fast with the accumulated dice, even if it's just 1 out of 20. So,
Right.
so the point that I'm trying to say is that the system is basically, it's making you, chase dice, but it's also, regardless of success, adding the complications.
Okay.
So that is an example of something of the kind of dynamic that you're talking about. Um, and what's also kind of nice is that there's no record keeping in that particular example. In that game, I mean, it's not like you have to keep track of like how many successes you've had so
Yeah.
far, or you don't have to do that. So I'm I know. Okay, so we do have some systems in which the trade-off of risk and the trade-off, so risking in terms of consequence is heightened with a higher chance of success. So it's not a trade-off of success and failure. It's basically, there's either failure or there's success with increased consequences and increased chance of success at the same time. That's what I see in
So,
both Trollbabe and in the Modifius system.
are you familiar with Cthulhu Dark?
Familiar with, in the sense that I've heard it and talked about it with people, but I have
Okay,
not played it.
because it sounds like that might fit in the same category because like there's a mechanic where, okay, if I want to increase my chance of success, I can add in a insanity die,
Right,
and if the insanity die comes up a 1 or 6 or whatever it is,
right,
then I have a problem with
right,
that. Yeah.
right. And I think that all of those are in that category. Now, I
Yeah.
don't know if you want to. Okay, so that's one category, which is, as I described, you get a heightened chance of success, but with special consequence that you've elected basically to take on.
Okay.
And then another way of doing it is more in the fate model, which is along the lines of what you were talking about in a slightly different way. Basically, you are accumulating. Um, basically, you're kind of accumulating fate points by playing your character and accepting certain things that are handed to you, and you spend them to jump up your chances or to improve your results. And in the case of fate, it's supposed to be counterbalanced by the accumulation of hazards. Um, but in my experience, the hazards are running a distant second to the accumulation of fate points. But that's not the point here. The
Yeah.
point here is that you have some kind of, when you get these certain positive effects, then the hazards start to accumulate. When you accept these particular criteria, then your fate points go up. So you basically have fate points and hazards both doing this. Jared's
Okay.
Octane originally, his game Octane from 20 years ago, was along the same lines.
All right. Now, my personal experience with Fate was that roles weren't very exciting
I agree.
because okay,
Oh, profoundly.
okay,
Yeah.
and there was like a lot of, instead of focusing on the fiction, like what was happening in the game, there had to be a lot of, okay, I need to create another advantage so that, because there's so many, I need to get 4 points above, and so I have
Mm-hmm.
to do this. So it became like a kind of, um, there was too much record keeping, handling time that
Mm-hmm.
was not that interesting
I
for
think,
me
yeah,
personally. Yeah.
I,
So
I I will go further with the statistics in this regard if we wanted to, but I don't think we have to here. The To agree with you.
okay,
And a big part of that is that, again, there is a in a system like that, the currency of what's being on your side, fate points, and the currency of what's not being on your side, the hazards, are about the same thing. They either make a result go up or they make a result go down, and that's all there is to it. And so it's kind of like, spend a dollar, get a dollar, get a dollar, spend a dollar, all the time, right? And that's all there is.
gotcha.
And so your description of your original description, which is that as we accumulate successes, we accumulate penalties, and as we accumulate failures, we accumulate bonuses, seemed like it could have that particular problem. That's what I was saying. The risk of such a thing is a
Right.
race to the middle, where everything, basically every time you fail, the bonuses kind of save your ass, and every time you succeed, the penalties knock it down. And that way, the game master basically has you at a nice even boil at all times,
Right.
period.
Yeah. I mean,
And
I
is that
I,
really
I
what we
have been.
want? Do we want an equilibrial effect during play, or do we want chaos theory with booms and crashes?
Yeah. More of the latter, I would say. Yeah.
And I'm that kind of guy. I mean, yeah, so um, and so therefore, that's why I was saying that your system, as described, if you stuck with it, which you obviously don't have to, but if you stuck with that idea, then we would really have to look at the degree of consequence per failure as the critical variable.
Right.